A Judeo-Christian Guide to Healing from Complex Trauma by Valerie Lynn Stevens. Is complex PTSD a, quote, mental illness? There has been much heated debate about the assertion that complex PTSD is not a mental illness, but a psychological injury. The reasons for distinguishing between the terminology is not to derogate or to make comparisons about who is ill and who is healthy, but to unburden survivors of the internalized shame which their original abusers inflicted upon them by the abuse of psychiatric terminology and diagnostics to scapegoat and dominate them. Basically, what it comes down to is the abusive, exploitative, sociopathic individuals who injured us in the first place are the ones who must be identified as mentally and morally ill if deep recovery is ever to be breached for survivors. After all, most of our complex trauma is a direct result of being coerced and systematically programmed and gaslighted into an interpersonal dynamic which merely sought to scapegoat us into being the identified patient and the one with the problems. In truth, it was our abusers who suffered such disorders of personality and character. Of course, this is not meant to discount the fact that many sufferers of CPTSD and PTSD have not been diagnosed with comorbid conditions. However, many professionals and laymen alike have often remarked that if the DSM were refined, many conditions currently being treated as discrete disorders would, in fact, be best served and acknowledged as direct and indirect symptoms of deeper interpersonal trauma. Nevertheless, the importance of, as Shahida Arabi puts it, engaging in reverse discourse with our programmers and abusers remains an intractable aspect of full and deep recovery for all survivors. We have earned the right, in fact, always possessed the right to be assessed fairly and pro-socially in ways that are not merely more demeaning and derogatory, and in ways that do not, at the expense of our well-being, merely reinforce old roles and cognitive patterns which predatory and character-disturbed individuals would benefit in keeping us in. There is a moral imperative for each individual to be granted full reign over that of their own self-actualization. There is also a moral imperative for each one to carry their own load, and not just physically speaking, but psychologically speaking as well. We all must do our own, quote, soul work, as it has been called, in order to not only stop the cycle of injury which humankind seems to relish, and choose indifference towards inflicting upon one another, but to support a healthier, more robust society for all individual persons to be able to contribute each their own brand of genius and skills to, as within, so without. Healing the individual soul is a potential salve for anima mundi, or the world soul, one recovered person at a time.